Nations and Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee meeting for November 27th, 2025 here at City Hall. We're going to call the meeting to order. Is there any declarations of conflict of interest? Hearing none.
Nope.
Do I have an approval of the agenda?
Second.
Thank you. The previous minutes are in your package from September 2025. Do I have the approval of those minutes?
Moved. Second.
Thank you. Any business arising from those previous minutes? Deputy Mayor, I assume you'll just jump in if, because you can hear us?
Yeah, and you can assume I'm in favor unless I tell you otherwise.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a number of discussions and reports this afternoon, so no further ado, we'll jump into those. So our first report and discussion is on Committee of the Whole. Several weeks ago, maybe even now a couple months ago, Council met together to kind of go over the potential and looking at what Committee of the Whole might look like in relation to potentially even going as far as to eliminating the various committees that we have. So we had a meeting of council here in a public forum. It was again a couple of months ago. And as a takeaway from that, one of the requests that we had to the CAO was to look at that also from the potential of staff impact. So it's as good as the discussion that we had in chamber and some of the points that were brought forward and some of the benefits and challenges, we needed to really kind of have an understanding too from the perspective of how that might impact operations in the city. So I'm going to hand it over to our CAO, Brad, to kind of give us a bit of an update on that and some highlights from that last discussion that we had. So thank you.
Could I just interject first?
Sure can.
This was left in my mailbox. Is there a way to be more efficient? And I'm looking through the document and it has similar connections. I'm assuming that this was an internal document.
Your Worship.
So I'm just wondering, did this transpire from staff or was it elected officials? Because I think if you look at it, there's, as I said, a lot of what I've looked in the report. Is there a way to be more efficient? Well, the committee or the item on the agenda is potential, Committee of the Whole potential staff impacts, which also relates to the report itself. Anyways, I'm just gonna provide that as document that we can add to this report. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, thank you to Your Worship. Yeah, I'm not aware of that document, Your Worship. I'm not sure.
It didn't come to us. I've been on this strategic priorities committee for 2 terms, 7 years.
It's not something that was shared with me,
Okay.
so
I don't know if it's an internal
didn't
document.
have a chance to review it. But since this issue has come before council and referred to senior staff to kind of assess the impacts of the Committee of the Whole structure, I have asked staff to prepare a report. It's in your package. Tracy had put this together, which we reviewed and certainly kind of gives a snapshot of the potential impacts. Since this conversation first started, we've had some changes. We've passed our new procurement bylaw and made some other changes to procedural bylaw, all of which will eventually have an impact on the things that come before committee and council over time. We are expecting that less volume of things will be coming through committee and council, which will, certainly, if that was to organically take that direction, then there would be less meetings and there'd be an opportunity to potentially group meetings together and Certainly, I think planning is kind of the outlier there. There's always seems to be planning issues, but there's several committee meetings that are very short in nature. There's very few things in the agenda. So in the efforts of efficiency, when that time comes, there could be the possibility that we are looking at grouping a number of committees together. If that happened, staff would still need to be required to prepare reports to be put before committee. And it may involve more senior managers or people to be involved in one meeting as opposed to several meetings. But I don't think it's, at this point, we're in a position to really assess the impacts. Do we see some of that evolution happen? I think we're too early in the stages of it. It is something we're monitoring closely, and we'll keep this committee and council updated as if we start to see it trending that way, then we will be signaling through a report and an update on this issue to committee and council what we think is appropriate and what what committees potentially could be grouped together, if all or some. I think if it operates alongside the existing committee, staff will need to present the same information multiple times. So if there was a special meeting of council that ran in parallel, it would seem to be working against what we're trying to achieve, efficiency. So Chair, I think, given these evolutions, like with the procurement bylaw and the procedural bylaw, I don't think right now we can fully assess the impacts. We need to let it play out here a bit first.
So, thank you for that. Interesting enough, if what we're gonna see as a result of, the procurement bylaw being one aspect of what could reduce some of the things that come to committee meetings. From my recollection, not sure that was probably one of the contentious items about wanting to kind of have everybody together. Mainly that'd be more on procurement aspects like a tender or something that could just flow through the normal process. I think so if we're gonna be removing a lot of that from a lot of committees, in some committees, that is where the bulk of what happens through that committee is normally discussions and debates around particular, tender for vehicles or equipment or something along those lines. So if we're not gonna be having that at the meeting, I think we even further reduce what is happening at those councilmen, and they're probably more leaning towards general reports. So like a report that we're gonna see here next, where we only have this team here that's getting an update on that particular report. And then when it comes to council, they see it in the package, and then again, we're repeating probably a lot of the same questions on that particular report, whatever it may be. So if anything, I see the inception of the procurement bylaw probably strengthening the fact that we could go to committee of the whole, because each of the committees are gonna become smaller and smaller to the point of, what are we gonna have at that committee meeting? So if we're not gonna be spending the majority of the time talking about procurement or things that are being addressed through other mechanisms now, it may make more sense to condense all those into one meeting where we just have a few reports in there. So if anything, I think it's gonna move us in that direction more so than put us, to make a solid case that we stay the way we are. Like this meeting, for instance, we tend to not have as many things on the agenda as one would probably like. We canceled last month's meetings, we didn't have any agenda items. Today we have an agenda. I've been on HR committee where we probably canceled more than we had because there's just not enough agenda items to kind of have a meeting. And that may be the case for some of the others, but I'm fine with waiting out and kind of seeing how those changes and impacts are gonna have on that. And ultimately, staff might come to us and say too, we're kind of having, every time we have a meeting, we're having a 10-minute meeting. Why don't we have one meeting where we can have 10 minutes for each person, each one in one meeting as opposed to a bunch of them, so.
So, Mr. Chair, your background in politics this is your first term. So, I served in council for 2 terms from 2001 to 2006. My brother served here for 14 years, sat in the House for 22. Committees have always been part of the process, so if you go through each level of government, committees do most of the work. Now, it may be repetitive, it may be redundant, but that's the process. I spoke to Councillor Mara Gardner. She was at our CCCO meeting, Canadian Capital Cities Organization annual meeting in Fredericton. She's from Victoria. And I think one of our councillors went out to Victoria and saw how they operate at their meetings. They have the committee of the whole. They want to go back to the committees. Because what's happening is that the managers, the bureaucracy's coming in and saying, okay, here's what we have. Download it quickly, right? And you have a lot of information you have to process from one part of your community to another part of the community. So it could be environment, sustainability, it could be public works, it could be parks, recreation, leisure. There's a lot of information. And you have to have that information all covered before you go into the meeting. So let's add on procurement. We've streamlined procurement so that we don't have to go back to every committee meeting with a resolution to expend money. As soon as it's identified in the budget, passed by council at the annual budget meeting, we move on. But it's up to us. That's why I keep saying to councillors, it's up to us now to keep our eyes on anything that's going through the committees on expenditures, because it's not going back into that chamber. It's staying in the committee room. I believe that committees have a
It
structure.
comes to the committee though. I don't think those procurements are even coming to the committee.
We Public Works, we have to recommend a expenditure for paving. We have to go package A, package B.
Yeah.
That would go through here and then go to council. There had to be a recommendation from council.
Yes, but now it doesn't have to be.
No, but now your eye has to be on what's going on in that budgetary
My understanding is
component
with
or
the
that
new
budgetary process for that standing, or that Public Works Department, Parks and Recreation Department, and
My
so.
understanding is the procurement bylaw will now negate the fact that that has to actually come to even that committee to have that conversation, even have the conversation, not for approval, but just even have the conversation. The tenders will go out, it's in budget, it's in capital, and then they'll just go this way.
But council members would find out what streets were being paved through that budgetary process. Now, we have to keep our eye on what's going to be paid in your ward. What's going to be added in terms of a
We're all on the
sidewalk,
same page
in
of that.
terms of a park or an active transportation pathway. Like, I know we're trying to streamline, but streamlining, you have to keep in mind, a process that's been in place since 1855.
No, I'm gonna comment on that in a minute, but let's.
Yeah, but if I can just finish.
I'm sorry.
It does work. It doesn't work for all, but experience has shown me that it works.
Yeah, and I think this is why we're trying to let it evolve here to see what the fit is. Because, we still understand the need for committees to be aware of the work being done, right? Because it's a long time from the start of the approval of the budget to the end of the year. And my understanding, and your worship, you may have better understanding of this, but committee of the whole was tried one time within the city,
The whole was part of the process.
part of the process.
And it was, and the reason we got the MGA with section 119, subsection 1 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, because there were times that we would go into a committee of the whole after a regular monthly meeting, make decisions, and then go to a open meeting. That's why the system was changed.
So I guess as we put these building blocks in place, we are trying to assess, and advise council on the impacts, evolution, and the balance that I think we're trying to find here with.
So also I think we need to do is, let's not lose sight of the fact that, okay, so first let me just comment on, so I recognize that there's been traditionally, federally, provincially, committees, et cetera, et cetera. At the municipal level, that is a tradition as well, that exists, but there's also the tradition of committee of the whole. You can't deny that. Whether it works in some or it doesn't work in some, it doesn't matter. But without standing committees is what I'm saying. So let's not lose sight of the fact that as council members came forward and we had that discussion, that was really to have the discussion, to see if there was an appetite, to see if there was efficiencies and see what we could do. I'm not here to debate whether we should have it or don't have it, that's not the thing. We were just looking at all the different possibilities. If at the end, we stay status quo, that's fine too. If things are gonna change, that may help in some of what the concerns were brought forward, because, I'm not a police and fire and I don't get to see something and I'd have to watch it, and now that may eliminate itself and we may look to say, maybe we can reduce some of our committees and combine them together to be more efficient because some of them are lighter than others.
Mhm.
That's another pathway forward. So I think it's just really to open the door for different possibilities. I certainly don't have a hard line saying I want to get rid of all committees and have that. I want to explore options and see what makes us more efficient and stuff. So that really was where we're at. So that was the discussion. I thought it was great. We had lots of different points of views in there and everybody shared what they felt. Nobody was right, nobody was wrong. We kind of collectively looked at that, and then we looked at the CAO and said, oh yeah, by the way, how would this have an impact on you? So that was really what we were trying to do. And if you feel where you are today with that, then that's fine. We can
Well, I
accept
just-
that and look at what that looks like in the future. And
Changes to the procurement bylaw are just so fresh,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
really haven't
that's
been able
fair.
to
And
assess the impact yet.
so today wasn't really to further strengthen anything other than to kind of see where it had from the operational impact. And we may continue to have this discussion after a period of time when we start to see some of the changes that is bringing in and some other changes here. You're new to the role as the CAO. There may be some observations that you're making from a committee and staff level that you might want to recommend to the mayor and council as well. And we can look to see how that evolves. That's really, I think, where we're at. So is everybody fair? Is that fair?
So, can I just add, Mr. Chair, that's the purpose of this committee. You have a document that is part of our package. That document should be debated here. And that's why I brought up my views on what I think is a path forward. But 1997, George McDonald was a new mayor. He came in and he was going to amalgamate, you might recall, he amalgamated the committees. He had Public Works, Water and Wastewater as a combined committee, Police, Fire Services, which was separate at that time, but remained combined. They had 5 committees. It lasted 6 months because some councillors weren't getting were not getting the opportunity to stand up and speak about their committee. Look, I believe that hybrid would work. I do. But to do a complete overhaul is, to me,
And hybrid could be where
Could be-
we land
could be
at the end of the
possible.
day. So I think if I speak for council or the majority or whatever, that's what we're looking to see what comes out of this, right? It could be status quo, hybrid, or, does the city of Charlottetown need a different approach, right? I don't know if that's what was the message that was being delivered, that we need an approach. I think it was more to do with, can we talk about it, can we explore it, and, what's other people's feelings about it, so, yeah. Okay, so let's,
and just one last point, Mr. Chair. In terms of Michael's here,
Yeah.
in terms of the Planning Act,
yes, I didn't realize.
for the Planning Board, the Heritage Board, the Design Review Board, it requires residential participation. And if that's not in the Planning Act, then that's in our zoning development bylaw. So you have to take that into consider. And do all councillors want to sit around and do planning discussions? I don't think so.
No, it's certainly,
Don't think so.
it's not one size fits all.
No.
There's certainly implications to other committees that are certainly stronger in the way in which they present themselves, and I think everybody recognized that, so I do appreciate the discussion on it, I appreciate the follow-up. I think you've followed through with what we asked of you that night in council to do so. So we can kind of maybe revisit this in the new year, just to see if, how things are moving and maybe get some feedback from the councillors. And if we're just moving on from it, we're moving on from it. That's fair too, so. Okay, let's move on from this topic today. So I'm gonna hand it over to Melanie for our next, which is,
Can I just say one thing?
sure can.
Okay, thanks. And sorry about the dog just barking in the background, sorry. And I agree with his worship and with CAO McConnell. We'd stay the course for now. The only thing I would like to see more of, and I think I discussed this with his worship, would be that there are opportunities to have these committee of a whole meetings on certain like big things, like maybe budget or whatever. So just to highlight that I'm looking forward to us, keeping our committees, but also still incorporating in some of these committee of a whole meetings. That's all.
And I
Thank you.
think others would agree with that too.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, just breaking news, we do have a terms of reference that Cindy's been working on, I think Chantel and the CAO. So that terms of references will be coming to council, terms of reference for the committee of the whole. It's required, I think, it's required under the procedural bylaw, so that will be coming
Hence, when
forward.
we added
As soon as
that
we have that in place,
That might
that
alleviate
opens
some.
up
That opens up a different
discussion.
okay. We're gonna hand it over to Melanie, who's going to give us a update on the priority bylaws that we were working towards. Over to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Chair Mutard. As a follow-up from our September committee meeting, it was requested, Councillor Mutard, Mayor, to have a update on the current status of our priority bylaws. And so I'm doing that here today. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of check in on where things are at, to make sure we're all on the same page and make sure there isn't any additional directions to consider related to next steps that we'll be rolling out over the next few months. So looking at the 10 priority bylaws, they are now 9 priority bylaws. Council had voted to remove the capital recovery bylaw recommendation, so we're at 9. Of those 9, 7 are complete or nearing the very last step of completion. 2 of them that remain, one is on hold pending the finance manager who would direct next steps, and I would come in to support that person. And 1 is just on hold. I've just reached saturation for how many bylaws I can coordinate at the same time. So over the next few months, when some time frees up, I'll be able to step into that and support. So just looking through each of them, just to kind of quickly update on where they're at. So of course, of these 9 bylaws, at the end, there is 9 other mentioned. Those were low priority or legal requirements. Those 9 allowed me to learn the process through Tracy's training and support, with Tracy doing a lot of the work, Cindy doing the work, and then just learning the process required and steps required. So from the priority bylaws, the unsightly is complete. We know that a more modern approach is needed, and that will be a focus when the other bylaws have completed their required steps. The emergency measures bylaw, now called the emergency management bylaw per legal and per provincial legislation, was submitted to the Protective and Emergency Services last month, so you'll see that in council next month. This one was more time intensive than expected. It was not just a bylaw, it was a bylaw, emergency plan, updated training material, deliver training material, update MOUs, update emergency contacts, etc. So this was a huge coordinated effort with all of it complete, just final steps on the emergency plan required. The procedural bylaw, of course, has gone through council and was discussed again here today. The council code of conduct is complete. We're just held up on some internal decisions we need to make. The changes were more extensive than the original work scope and legal's requests due to recent changes to the code of conduct regulations. So we have bylaws complete for review and some internal steps to then move to committee to finish the process. The procurement bylaw, thank you so much to Lang and every department's work. I know this was very, very important.
Long process.
And I know questions came to me and I said, my hands are tied, and I was so thankful for the departments that came forward and Lane's leadership and Brad's leadership on that one. Both the bylaw and the policy, much needed and will direct procurement going forward, and of course, the procurement officer was hired, so a lot of good news on that one. The patio bylaw, similar to the code of conduct and others, we learned that while you can draft changes and you can advance so many changes, at some point, the person leading it has to step in to direct final steps. So with the patio bylaw, that has been Sebastian with Planning and Heritage. He's been doing a wonderful job. He did a report at his committee detailing lists and lists of items that were looked at and completed. The patio bylaw was due for public engagement November 13th. Unfortunately, that had to be canceled. And really, right now, it's just a matter of prioritizing. Planning and Heritage has a lot of public engagements, from the housing design to patio to zoning. So it's just a matter of figuring out the best plan for that to ensure best possible public engagement and not overwhelm the public. That will complete the process for that one. The fees bylaw is the one waiting on the finance manager. We're as far as we can go, and we just need some direction from that new staffing. Zoning, I can't speak to. It does fall under the Planning Act, but it's huge progress and it's a huge milestone. That alongside all other work with Planning and Heritage this year. The Victoria Park or the park's usage, both are required. Which one is done first is being looked at, and but ultimately both are required. This one is on hold pending just some time on my end to then work with Frank. We've pulled all the documents. We just need to determine next steps. And of course, from a parks perspective, right now the monuments policy per council is the priority, so that's being focused on. With then, when that progress is done, the park will be their focus again. And with the monument policy, just Frank has really stepped forward to initiate research and interdepartmental discussions. So look forward to seeing that progress. And the last is mentioned here, the capital recovery, but in future reports that will be removed. So that is a current status. More work to follow, some next steps related to public engagement, some internal decisions, and just advancing steps through committee. The few remaining to be prioritized. And then some next steps discussions, because some of the bylaws that were updated will now require other bylaws to be updated. And of course, staff and council have identified other priorities. So perhaps we'll look at what that might look like in future for picking future priority bylaws. And that's a summary.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Melanie, for certainly putting that together and giving us some brief context to it. I'll note that, when I first started here in council, one of the things that came to light really early in that term was the number of bylaws that we had that were outdated, needed updated, or we needed bylaws for certain things, procurement being that, and most recently the monuments one. So I think, it's fair, it's only fair that we recognize all the work that is done by the different staff in the departments who have really made this a priority over the last number of years, the last couple of years. Certainly council, we come forward and with some demands around bylaws that we'd like to see done yesterday versus tomorrow, so I know that's always not as easy, monuments one being there, but appreciate that is on the docket and is being considered a priority by the various stakeholders. And I do notice in here, which I don't know if we settled on that, but nonetheless, it does show the sponsoring committee as being this committee for the monuments bylaw. So I'm happy to see that, and I think we can accept that, although the work is being done, probably being led by with the parks and maybe also include other entities within the corporation that can help contribute to that. So I guess from a responsibility perspective, this committee, and I know our deputy is online there, and I know she's certainly very passionate about it and would like to see that come to fruition as well. So I guess deputy, we will keep the charge going on the monuments policy on this committee. But also I think it's good to recognize as well, Melanie, and I know you didn't skip over it, but there has been a variety of other updates that have happened that are not in our top 10, if you will, and you listed those there on the bottom of the policing services bylaw, the BIA, et cetera, so lots of good work that's happening from a bylaw perspective. And I'm looking over at Jessica thinking, from a communications perspective, I'm sure you're involved in these when they're finalized, and how do they get communicated out to the public that those have been updated? I'm sure our website does that, in our communications.
The
Do we-
website is updated in the bylaw page, yes, when something new is passed. And
Do we promote that publicly in the
typically, we would when there is a new bylaw passed, and not until it receives that sort of council approval.
Any other comments from the committee on this particular one?
I'm just waiting for the deputy, she isn't.
Deputy, any comment?
I don't think so. It's a great update. It's great that these bylaws are moving along. Thanks for your work on this, Melanie and Tracy and Cindy and everyone else that's been working tirelessly on them. And yes, I am looking forward to the monument policy as well.
Mr. Chair, just on the monument policy. Monument bylaw. We do have a war memorial bylaw that was put in place back in 2002. Would we not look at amalgamating those bylaws? There's another reason I say that, because we do own the Peacekeepers Monument on Boulder Square. It's in bad condition. And I was on council when I think Clifford Lee and the military came together to put that in, to install it. Well, we're responsible for the upkeep. So the War Memorial Monument bylaw, make sure that we take care of that War Memorial Monument that was opened in 1925. That's why we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the War Memorial Monument down at the end of Grafton and Great George Street. So, and we have another monument that lies out in front of the Coles building on the south side. It's the injured workers. When that was erected back in 2005, council took on the responsibility to maintain and care for it.
So, Your Worship, I guess my understanding of trying to get to a monument policy or bylaw, whatever, I don't know if we're doing a policy or more so than a bylaw, so the policy, which would allow for all, certainly, from all future requests that come in and how do we address those. I would have to think though that it would be a catchment for all the ones that are already.
Just want to put it in the public.
No, I know,
record.
I would assume that was natural to happen. Now, whether or not something is falling into another bylaw, it may be determined that should it fall under this policy versus maybe because it didn't have a proper place for it before. So I hope that's where we can see some of these efficiencies in, we used to have the patio bylaw, and then we had another bylaw, which was one that was related to COVID or like,
Oh, the COVID-19 bylaw.
I think we consolidated some of them, so I think there's great opportunities, and of course Melanie can't answer all this from a departmental level, because she can't speak to that in the department, but I'm sure Melanie, you can take these suggestions back to the department owners of those bylaws and say, hey, there was a suggestion around what's happening over here, can we look to merge that in over here, is there some synergies, or are they two completely different things, and so a lot of that could be discussed, but I think it's great because it's more efficiencies for sure.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Mr. Chair. Just to your point, that's something that collectively we're trying to do anytime we're engaged in these activities. So every single bylaw review, policy review, we're trying to work within the various departments cross-departmentally to ensure that we're streamlining everything as much as possible.
Right. And the reason I bring this up, Mr. Chair, because 2 monuments have been passed since the deputy asked for a policy or bylaw on monuments. So we have to find out who's gonna take care of those, maintain and ensure that they remain physically in good shape, or if it gets destroyed, who's responsible for repairing it? So I think that's, this monument policy or bylaw is, I think, coming at the right time. The stars are lined up to do a lot of work, but, yeah. My issue is that these new monuments that are gonna be going up, who will be responsible for the maintenance and care of them in the future? So we better clearly explain that to both groups. It's your monument, take care of it.
So just lastly on that monument policy, as we know and very publicly addressed, that there's been some good discussion and debate on that policy in council, and I think during our last meeting, we were firm as a council that we wanna move forward on this as a priority, and we want something drafted, and I think we left the CAO, and or at least I remember standing up and saying to the CAO, we'll kind of put a little pressure on you there for January so that we could have something to come back with, just so we don't lose, keep our eye on the ball and that we're really moving towards this, so that we're not 3 months down the road with another monument coming into the council and we're still saying, where are we at with this? So I just wanna make note of that, and I'm sure CAO that you're well aware of that and you're working towards that. So that's not to call you out here, that's just to point out that we're
I'll make sure, Mr. Chair, that under the business arising from the minutes,
Yes,
I'll follow up with it, because that's why we have business arising from the minutes.
there you go.
But just before we go on, enforcement and summary proceedings bylaw, could I ask Melanie, is everything tight on that? Do we have to do any more amendments?
Through the
Ask her if she can answer
chair,
it.
to your worship.
If you can answer it, if you can't,
I can. It's tightened up. We had
thank you.
great legal input, great department input, and it looks wonderful.
Awesome. Okay, good stuff.
Sure.
Thank you very much. So we're gonna stay with Melanie. We're gonna do an update on the diversity, equity, inclusion, training opportunities, and you wanted to speak to that today on the report, so take it away.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. So in the terms of reference for the DEI task force, which was formed by Mayor and Council and assigned to this committee as an oversight, part of that requirement is for the committee to produce DEI training opportunities, which is being done here today. As well, we've produced the work plan that we spoke about in the summer, and we're required to provide you some regular updates, and so we will be ready for that in December to just give an update on the status of the committee, pending chair and room on the agenda. So today is just very brief. The task force, specifically 2 members, Joe Morrison and Diane. Diane specifically and Joe's support have produced this document, and the DI task force members have reviewed, given input, and found one last training opportunity we weren't aware of. So we now have a comprehensive list of all DEI training opportunities that are local in Charlottetown. We have, this is first step towards both a resource where we know where we can get additional DEI training opportunities. It doesn't speak to the next step, which is while we have DEI training, or while we know DEI is important, what does that refresh look like? This will support quoting processes. We know who to request bids from. This is leading into the strategic plan DEI framework requirement. And the bigger goal is all of this work is leading into the next strategic plan, which the municipal best practice is a new strategic plan that has a DEI lens, an accessible lens, a climate lens, etc. So this is one part of that. Per the terms of reference, we're required to submit it to you, and it's shared with council. This is a reference document. We aren't required to organize training for council or staff. There are committee members that said if there was a request to do so, they would be happy to. This is a resource again for council and for staff, and just pleased to be able to submit this here today, and really pleased with the DI task force members who have been working hard on this and other important topics for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just wanted one clarification on this. So is this, I think you answered it, but I wasn't quite sure. So the opportunities here that are listed for DEI training, is that specific from that committee is saying for the administration and council of the city, right?
So Chair, yes, but also any other
Is it for
public
public? Yes,
organization.
that's what I was wondering. Is it also to make awareness to the public for people who may want to participate in that type of training? Now, if that is the case, I'm not sure if some of what is listed here, I'm sure most of it is, there's a no cost associated to taking this training. It's probably just based on capacity, whether they can take that, and a lot of it now is moved online, so a lot of those courses, so is that fair?
Through Chair, that's partially correct. So nonprofit organizations, some of these, so these are all of the DI training opportunities. Yes, we or the public can take. Wonderful opportunity, great resources here in Prince Edward Island. So some are free, some are sliding scale. Mostly though, if you are a private sector or public organization, there is cost. If you are nonprofit or charity, you may find that there are free options available to you.
Okay, so are you seeking our endorsement today? Is that what, or are you just bringing the information saying there's more work to be done on it?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a submission to you. Per the requirement, it would then go to council for information and to share the resources with them.
I certainly support the work that's been done by the DEI committee and what they brought forward from those opportunities, so I guess, I don't know, this guy's one second, so.
Second.
So we support that, moving that forward, yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for your reports, Melanie. Always lots of good information and for us to consider. So our last report, before we wrap up here today, is on cellular reception challenges within the city of Charlottetown.
Mr. Chair,
And it's brought forward by our worship, Mayor Brown, and I am gonna hand it over to him,
Appreciate the
because I think he would
opportunity.
like to
And-
have the discussion.
and I may be bringing something under, up on,
New
bring up
business.
something under new business that we can follow up on. But I can tell you, when I was elected in 2000, Charlottetown, remember this, CAO? Charlottetown was one of 12 communities selected by the Canada's Smart Communities Program. And that program was an effort to update, enhance technology at municipal government level. Other communities, it was probably used for other reasons, but here, that's what was the purpose. So those desks that have those monitors, that's where those monitors came from. That was the start. Now, here we are 25 years later, and I'll read out selected 12 communities, one from each province, to be centers of expertise in using information and communication technologies, ICT, for community development. So we're currently working, or have been working, on a fiber network. I don't know where we're going with it, but it's moving. Spending some time in Stratford for the Canadian, the Communities in Bloom annual conference. Stratford, Ontario, has their own fiber network. They promote that as, we're a smart community. You wanna do business here? You can hook up. Our cost, are they competitive with TELUS, Bell, Rogers? I'm sure they are. That's where I'm looking at. But when it comes to cellular service, Mr. Chair, it's been coming to our attention over and over again that the services here in Charlottetown are not equal to what is in other communities. That's why the information I sent to all the committee members and I think staff about what I've been receiving. So the last time we put up a cell tower was in 2019. And I thought we had put up another tower between 2019 and 2022, 2023. So I phoned Alex Forbes, our former manager of planning, and he said, yes, Philip, there was an application to put one up on McAleer Drive, on the corner, and again, is this transport is? Anyways, the first application was to put it right on the roadside. So when you're driving north of Mount Edward Road, I said, Alex, you can't put it there. Anyways, there was some negotiating, they moved it back. But the application never went anywhere. And Industry Canada said, you know what, we don't care what City Hall does. If you deny it, we're still gonna put it up, because Industry Canada has a responsibility for national, federal telecommunications. So, you know, we're very fortunate that we have the CEO, Robert Giss, who lives in Charlottetown, CEO of the Canadian Wireless Technologies Association. And I've asked Robert to come in here and talk about it. Probably not gonna happen, because he can't weigh into something that is something, it's a responsibility that he's responsible for the whole industry. not for one community like Charlottetown. I like to find just a path forward, Mr. Chair, that we can address this. And what does that require? I think I'm willing to put the time into, who do we send correspondence to? Who do we talk to? Like Dr. Richard, Nicole Richard, who lives in Ward 3. I sent you her email, correct? And her email is that I'm a doctor and I can't get Wi-Fi access. Now, I've been told, well, just use your own data. Well, if the Wi-Fi is not getting me into the system, what's my data gonna do? So I just want to keep moving this forward and go back to when we were in 2000, one of the 12 smart communities selected to push technology. I wanna keep pushing that technology because that's what communities rely on. It's not just the bricks and mortar. Bricks and mortar have moved on to, Amazon, moved on to PayPal, everything that you can do online. So I'm asking that we, send this back to administration just to see what's the path forward. The letter can come from, we can bring forward a correspondence that will be voted on by council and send that off to the powers that be.
So I do have, I'm gonna hand over to CEO because I know you want to comment, but I do have some comments as well.
Chair and through the worship, I'm just trying to unpack that a little bit. So is that a letter to telecom communities, or is it a letter to Mr. Giz or?
Industry candidate, I think that's what we have to decide, what's the best path forward.
Okay.
So I had similar questions. Certainly took the opportunity to read through the majority of the information that you sent. Some of it goes back historically before my time, obviously. There has been discussions at council and even to the point of a resolution, I believe, was. But what I ascertained from all of that was that, certainly from a municipality perspective, we have no jurisdiction or control over, telecommunications and the governing aspects of that. What we do have a bit of, I guess if you call it control or impact on, is land and planning and allowing for those types of things to be erected within the city. So they were talking about Sherwood Road, I guess that's probably what you're talking about, the corner of
162,
Macaulay or
yeah.
162. So I think as a player in this, or like a partner in this, if we're going to be sending out a letter and, to whoever that may be and trying to garner attention and for advocating on behalf of getting more cellular towers within the city of Charlottetown, we should be able to have to back that up, because I'm so sure, but where are we gonna put it? So we need to know where we would be able to do that. And then, of course, the impacts of that is to a community and those kind of areas. So don't disagree with the notion of what part do we play in this. I know where I live, which is very close to where the CEO lives. I have very bad cell service there. I can't even use the cell phone in my basement, and there's a couple dead zones. So I would never have, my frustration about that is to my carrier, not to the city of Charlottetown. I don't say, when is the city gonna correct this problem? So I don't think it's, we can help alleviate that problem by being a supporter of the processes through what we need to go through from planning, approvals, those types of things, and also possibly even from a land perspective. So certainly sounds like an idea that we could do that. Again, I know you wanna send a letter advocating for this. I don't know who that would be
Yeah.
towards.
Mr. Chair, if I just can say, if it's a correspondence or actually meeting in person, bring that person to the committee. But could I ask Rory if he could interject, because Rory and I spoke about this before, and he said, well, since we just went on, we're now with Eastlink, we always were with Bell, but Eastlink is our provider for the city. And you're saying that their service throughout the city is good, bad, ugly?
Yeah, through the chair, it's been better in general. Just taking Brighton as an example, because that's one of the problem spots. Just drove through this morning doing some testing for some other questions that we had, and no issues at all with cell coverage through Eastlink, whereas with
You know,
Bell, it was
but it's all
constant drop
dependent
calls.
on each individual carrier and,
Exactly.
you know, there's all kinds of factors. I mean, there's factors of, vegetation, there's factors of bricks and mortar, there's, like, it's hard to narrow it down to lots of things. And I'm sure, as, I've read in the media, the provincial government in rural areas have been going after, the big companies about the challenges faced in rural areas and cellular service and lines and, really difficult to pinpoint it down to a particular situation. I think all of the carriers that represent the telecommunications space in Prince Edward Island need to be addressing this because, it's Eastlink for this person, it's TELUS for this person, it's Rogers for this person, whatever the case may be. So again, bringing it back to what can the city do and how can we be responsive? I think that is us going forward with obviously identifying concerns that are being brought to the city administration by the residents that live in Charlottetown. Summerside may have the same problem, Montague may have the same problem, and but if we're gonna do that, we have to come to the table with something as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, so what, they might come back and say, great,
What are you gonna do?
what are you gonna do for us? So we need to be able to put our money where our mouth is too, right?
Fully agree, sir, fully agree.
Yeah.
Chair, I'm just wondering, in that letter, should we also request information? I'm assuming these telecom providers are doing testing and have some assessment of coverage areas that in our efforts to try to help and support maybe in land use that they provide information so we can actually.
Yeah, this is a known issue. It's not, nobody's gonna be surprised about our letter to say we're, we get cell service in
Yeah.
Charlottetown and across the island. I'm sure there are trying to figure out, but if the barriers, especially for Charlottetown, are there because of things that we need to do and loosen up on or whatever, then I feel that's our commitment, whatever. And whether it's land, our policies, our approvals through planning and whatever some of the documentation that you sent and I was reading talked about the erection of the
50.
towers and how there's a 50
50 foot.
Yeah, 50 foot, but there was also like buffer zones and different things that you
Right.
can't just go put in my backyard,
No.
right, and expect that that's where it'd be.
Yeah.
But it can be
Security
in
issues
other
too.
areas and security and so on and so forth, so.
Yeah.
I guess then from the perspective of this committee, I don't see any harm in us putting forward, so if you wanna.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure, I'm not doing I don't wanna be accused of doing something behind someone's back, I just wanna make sure the chair knows, committee knows, that I wanna move on this and
Sounds reasonable.
might work with Rory and some, our tech people just to say, okay, and planning, like, what do we have to do?
It
What's
sounds
the strategic priority for the city?
Sounds reasonable that we would do something along those lines, but like I say, we have to be able to come to something with the table as well, right, whatever that looks like, so.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for that discussion, and hopefully we can make a small impact on those big problems. Okay, all right, Deputy, you've been quiet, and I know you're there.
Yes.
Anything you'd like to add to that, before I move on?
No, I'm good. Yep,
Thank you very
all
much.
good.
Thank you. Okay, so just moving on, is there any new business that
New
someone would like
business,
to?
Mr. Chair, I just want to ask, is this the standing committee responsible for, and I wanna congratulate the CAO and senior management. CAO, Brad McConnell, has set up a innovation task force. So innovation ties in technology, talks about new ways of doing, procedures, policies. I think this is a good step forward. I'm asking, I think this is the most appropriate standing committee for this innovation task force to go through. So I'm just trying to get feedback and.
So the CA and I, we spoke briefly about this,
Good.
in just a status meeting that we were having, and I certainly support innovation. It's something I'm part of in my other life, so I think as you bring it up here now, certainly, innovation doesn't always necessarily mean technology, but it also could mean innovating in other ways, so I think we could, and it could have some intergovernmental aspects to it where we're collaborating and innovating with other levels of government or even other agencies and businesses outside there. So naturally, if I quickly scan across all the other ones, I would probably think that this could be the most appropriate place for that. And maybe that's a little bit because I get a vested interest in that innovation aspect of it, but so just putting that out there, so maybe there's a little bit of bias around that.
Bias. Okay. I agree.
Deputy, what would your thoughts on that be? She said in the absence of silence, she said yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was trying to say that, yes.
We weren't hearing you there, Sarah, you might have been on mute when you were talking, but. Okay, well, no, look forward to that then,
Thank
and
you.
so maybe at some point we could have a more wholesome discussion on what that looks like. If you're working on something around that, a framework for that and what that looks like, so maybe in the new year, if you have something you wanna bring forward to this committee to have a discussion, I think that'd be great. And if we can build something around it, that,
And Mr. Chair, just a second item, could we get at the next meeting some conclusions or some closing thoughts on our strategic plan for 2022-2026? And then could we also get an update on our proposed strategic plan for 2026 to 2030?
so
2030.
Melanie and I have had some good conversation
Oh,
about that.
good.
No, it wasn't official, it was
No,
just, we've
good,
had some
good,
good
I just wanted
conversation.
to follow up on it.
And it certainly goes in line with, the fact that we will have potentially a new, I was gonna say administration, but a new council in November, December of 2026. And how does that align with the next strategic plan and their input? So yeah, I think we need to kind of talk about alignment along that as well. But also recognizing that, we're not likely to finish all of our action items in our 22 to 26, is it 22 to 26?
Yeah.
Plan, and that's fine, there's lots of work to do, those things will likely carry over into our next plan if we still feel they're a priority, and this administration or the next I'm saying administration meeting council, but that they would do that, so I think that's another great point, and so.
Thank you, sir.
So let's do it.
Thank you very much.
All right, do I have, we're gonna adjourn, so do I have
Motion
some
to adjourn.
motion to move? Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.